What you want is the very thing that owns you. You don't see it at first. It enters your mind like a spark, harmless, almost beautiful. A longing, a goal, a hope. And before you realize it, that spark becomes a command. You wake each morning not with stillness but with need. You move not from choice but from compulsion. You tell yourself you're chasing something greater, but in truth you're being pulled. You thought desire meant you were alive. You thought wanting deeply was a sign of purpose. You told yourself that to long for more was noble, admirable. They taught you that to dream is to live fully, that to burn with ambition, to hunger for love, to stretch towards something beyond yourself is the very meaning of being human. But look closer. When was the last time your longing gave you peace? Not excitement, not adrenaline, but peace. When did your pursuit ever silence the ache it came from? It doesn't, and it won't. Because desire doesn't end in fulfillment, it ends in more desire. You get what you want, and you feel it. The rush, the reward, the brief golden pause, and then it's gone. You need again, crave again. The will to live does not allow satisfaction to last. It must always find the next object, the next form, the next illusion, because the will is not interested in peace. It is interested in motion, in compulsion, in continuation. And you are its tool. You believe your desires are yours. You believe you are the author of your cravings. But you are not. The will speaks through you and you obey. It hungers and you name the hunger ambition. It burns and you call it love. It screams and you think it is your soul. But your soul has been hijacked by a force that does not care whether you suffer as long as you keep moving. And so you spend your life chasing. Always forward, always hoping, always just a little more, a little closer, a little better. The job, the woman, the status, the moment of recognition, the final piece that will make it all feel complete. But it never arrives because what you are chasing is not something real. You are chasing the silence that you hope will follow fulfillment. You want peace. You want the hunger to stop. But the tragedy is this. The hunger is not the path. It is the prison. And the longer you chase it, the tighter it holds you. This is what they never told you. That desire is not a sign of power, it is a sign of enslavement. You are not free because you want. You are enslaved because you believe your wanting will lead you home. And so I ask you now, when did your desire ever truly free you? When did longing bring you anything other than more longing? You chase success and you find exhaustion. You chase love and you find dependence. You chase peace and it runs further with every step. This is not living. This is submission. And if you felt that, if you've ever reached the thing you thought would complete you only to feel emptier than before, then say it now. Mark it in the comments. Desire used me. Because once you name it, once you stop calling your chains a purpose, something else begins. Not joy, not happiness, but clarity. And clarity is the first freedom. You were never free. That's the truth you've been running from. You thought your choices were yours. You thought your goals reflected your soul. But what you've called your purpose has always been obedience. Obedience to something far older, far deeper, and far more indifferent to your peace than you ever imagined. That thing is the will, the blind, undifferentiated force that underlies all life, the will to live. It has no face, no voice, no reason. It only wants. It only drives. It only repeats. And you are its puppet, its vessel, its tool. Every time you thought, I must have this, that wasn't you. That was the will speaking through you. It doesn't ask, it commands. It disguises itself as longing, as passion, as destiny. And it uses your intellect, your precious self-image to justify its hunger. You don't think your way into desire. You feel pulled, and then you craft a story around that pull. You make it sound noble, spiritual. You call it intuition, vision, faith. But it is none of these things. It is compulsion. And you serve it every day. This is why your dreams change. This is why your goals shift the moment they are reached. Because the will does not care what you chase, only that you keep chasing. It creates lack, then hands you an image. It says, there. That's what you need. And once you have it, it whispers, not quite. Look again, and you obey. You obey because you've been trained to believe that your craving is a sign of life. But craving is not aliveness, it is bondage. True life begins not in wanting, but in seeing. And what you must now see is this. The will never wanted you free. It wanted you useful. It wanted you driven. It wanted you hollow enough to keep moving, but full enough to believe you were close to peace. Every desire you've ever had was placed in you to keep the engine running. The engine of sex, the engine of ambition, the engine of spiritual seeking. All of it. Designed not to liberate you, but to use you. Because the will cannot exist in stillness, it needs motion. And motion requires hunger, and this is why even when you're exhausted, you can't stop. It's why even when you know you're burning out, you still crave, still fantasize, still imagine that the next milestone will change something. That if you can just get there, wherever there is, you'll finally breathe. But you won't, because the system is not broken, it is functioning perfectly. And now that you know that, now that you see the will's design, ask yourself, who have you been all this time? If your thoughts were forged by your needs, if your needs were placed by the will, then what remains of you, if anything, that is truly free? That question isn't meant to frighten you, it's meant to wake you. Because once you stop mistaking compulsion for calling, once you stop calling your slavery a path, then and only then can you begin the quiet turning away. The will never wanted you free. But you don't have to want what it wants anymore. You got what you wanted, the thing you dreamed of, worked for, suffered toward. You touched it, held it. For a moment, everything felt quiet, full, like life had finally answered. But the silence didn't last. The peace never stayed. The satisfaction slipped through your hands like smoke, and before you knew it, the old ache returned, wearing a new face, whispering a new goal. Every desire ends in a deeper need. This is not failure, this is not bad luck or poor timing, this is the structure. You are not meant to be satisfied. Satisfaction would stop the game. And the will cannot allow that. Its only command is to go on, to continue. And so every time you reach the summit, it plants a new one on the horizon, and you are always almost there, but never quite. Think back, the promotion, the lover, the recognition, the breakthrough. Each one promised arrival, and each one delivered repetition. You told yourself, this is it, but it never was. Because desire doesn't aim at peace, it aims at motion. Its goal is not stillness, but perpetuation. And so what it gives you is never enough. It was never supposed to be. You live inside a pattern, craving, pursuit, attainment, emptiness, new craving. And still you believe, still you chase, still you tell yourself that the next thing will be different. But the ache you're trying to cure is not out there, it's structural. Built into the very fact of being conscious under the will. You suffer not because you are without, but because you are made of wanting. The will gives you just enough to keep moving, but never enough to stop. It doesn't reward you. It resets you. You win and the clock restarts. You love and the fear of loss appears. You achieve and the emptiness deepens, so you build new dreams, sharper desires. You convince yourself that what you wanted before wasn't quite right, that now you've matured, refined, evolved. But the hunger beneath it hasn't changed. It's the same fire dressed in new language. You think you are progressing, but you are circling. Desire is a spiral, not forward but downward. Every revolution brings you closer to exhaustion, to disillusionment, to the breaking point where you no longer have the energy to lie to yourself. And when that moment comes, when you sit quietly with the thing you thought would complete you and realize it didn't, you feel the first flicker of clarity. You see that you were not moving toward anything. You were running from the stillness where the will loses its grip. If you felt that, if you've reached the thing you longed for and still felt the ache, then you already know. Desire doesn't deliver you, it devours you. And every time you get what you wanted, it only sharpens your next hunger. You are not a success story. You are a vehicle, and the will is not finished with you yet, unless you begin to see. You were told he exists, the fulfilled man, The one who wanted, pursued, attained, and now walks in peace. The one who has it all, who radiates contentment, who finally made it. And for most of your life, you chased his shadow. You thought if you worked hard enough, thought deeply enough, wanted it purely enough, you'd arrive where he lives. But you never met him. You've seen versions, men with wealth, with status, with admiration. But look in their eyes. Really look. Behind the smile, behind the crafted image, there is movement, restlessness, a flicker of discontent they don't speak of, because they've been rewarded too much to admit the truth. They are not fulfilled. They are only well-fed slaves. The man who has everything must now protect everything. The man who is admired must constantly perform. The man who reached the top finds there is no summit, only a new level of obligation, a new hunger disguised as responsibility. Even kings suffer, especially kings. The more you acquire, the more you must fear loss. The more you are seen, the more you are trapped in what must be maintained. Fulfillment was never the end of desire. It was the intensification of it. Schopenhauer said it plainly. The satisfaction of a desire merely makes room for a new one. The will does not stop at victory. It uses victory as fuel for the next illusion. You never really wanted the thing. You wanted the feeling you imagined it would give you. And that feeling, the sense of peace, of wholeness, never arrives. You were taught to admire those who run fastest, but the ones who run fastest are the ones most afraid of stopping. Stillness terrifies the man driven by desire, because in stillness he sees that all he built was scaffolding over emptiness. You thought the man with everything would be free, but he is not. He is tied to his own image. He is managed by his success. He is praised for what he has, not who he is. And when the applause fades, even for a moment, he feels the same hollowness you do. So if even he is not at peace, what does that tell you? It tells you that desire cannot be outgrown. It cannot be mastered by accumulation. The game does not end when you win. The game ends when you refuse to play. You are not broken because you haven't arrived. You are broken because you still believe there is an arrival. There is no fulfilled man. There is only the man who stops believing in fulfillment. And when you become that man, when you stop chasing ghosts, you don't gain peace. You become peace. Not because the world gave it to you, but because you no longer ask the world to deliver what it never had. You believed you were the author of your life, that your dreams, your choices, your path were yours, but look closely at what you chased, at what you feared, at what you sacrificed. Were those choices born from freedom or from programming? Did you reach for what you truly wanted, or for what made the ache go quiet for a moment? You didn't choose the chase, you were chosen by it. The will works quietly, it doesn't shout, it doesn't announce itself, it whispers, it disguises its compulsions as your desires. It gives you flashes of emotion and lets your mind build stories around them. Stories of meaning, stories of destiny. And while you narrate your life as a seeker, the will sits back and uses your hands to carry out its endless project. Motion without rest. You've never truly been still. Even when your body is calm, your mind runs. The craving doesn't sleep. The hunger finds new shapes. You don't rest. You recharge for the next push. You think this is discipline, but it's dependence. You are dependent on striving, on becoming, on reaching. Because if you stopped, if you really stopped, you'd see the truth that you are not moving toward anything. You are being moved, and you don't know who is pulling the strings. The will does not care for your identity. In fact, it erases it. It builds your sense of self around what you long for. You say, I am someone who wants love, or I am someone who must succeed. But these are not identities. They are masks the will uses to justify its own momentum. The will doesn't need you to know who you are. It only needs you to keep chasing. And you do. You wake up hungry. You measure yourself by progress. You compare. You stretch yourself across 1,000 hopes. Not because they fulfill you, but because without them you wouldn't know who you are. You perform your life. You edit your thoughts. You shape your personality around the things that promise relief. And in doing so, you lose the one thing that might have saved you: stillness. The ability to sit in the ache without needing to convert it into a goal. You have never been the master. You have been a beautifully dressed puppet, rewarded for obedience, punished for reflection. The moment you stopped and asked, "Why do I want this?" you felt the tremor. Because the system cannot allow questioning. It only rewards motion. So now ask yourself, when did you stop being human and become a function? You weren't born to serve your desires, but now they speak louder than your soul. And the more you chase, the more you disappear. You thought you were building a life, but you were only building another layer of the cage. They told you to find your purpose, to chase it, to give everything for it. They said that once you found your why, the pain would make sense. That discipline would become devotion, that you'd wake up with fire in your chest, knowing exactly why you were here. So you searched, you reached, you broke yourself against the dream of meaning, but now you feel it, don't you? That quiet, unbearable question. What if my purpose was a lie? You didn't find purpose, you were handed it, by culture, by wounds, by repetition. You mistook your need to matter for a calling. You mistook the ache in your chest for a message from the divine. But it wasn't. It was just the will, disguising necessity as nobility. The will cannot control you with force, so it gives you dreams, beautiful ones, vivid ones, dreams that feel like yours. It makes you think you were born for something. But what you were really born into was a system that cannot allow rest. And the most powerful way to keep you running is to convince you that you're doing something sacred. You built your life around a purpose that was just another word for hunger. And because you didn't question it, you called the pain growth. You called the collapse transformation. But all you were doing was surviving yourself, and that's what hurts the most, realizing that your grandest why may have come not from strength but from injury. Many men chase greatness not because they're meant to be great, but because they cannot tolerate feeling small. Many men serve others not out of virtue, but because they are addicted to being needed. You built your why out of a wound. You built your mission out of compensation, and so your identity wrapped around your pain. And now, you defend it, even as it breaks you, even as it burns through your relationships, your peace, your body. Because if you stop, what's left? Who are you if not the one who fights for something? But here's the truth. If your purpose costs you your soul, it was never yours to begin with. The will seduces you with achievement and progress. It tells you that you matter when you move. But it's a lie. Movement is not meaning. Production is not peace. Purpose is not freedom if it is born from fear. You are not failing because you haven't done enough. You are failing because you still believe that enough exists. So let go. Let go of the story that your suffering will make sense one day. Let go of the need to wrap your wounds in philosophy. Let go of the idea that your worth lies in your effort. You don't have to turn every ache into a mission. You don't have to bleed to feel real. You don't have to perform your pain to be valid. If you thought your goals would save you, but they consumed you, then say it. Comment: I mistook chains for wings. That sentence isn't despair. It's the beginning of clarity. Because once you stop worshiping your purpose, you begin to feel what has always been waiting beneath it. Silence. And in that silence, for the first time, you are no longer the servant. You are simply yourself. Desire doesn't lift the soul, it shatters it, it splits you in half. One part of you stays here in this moment, incomplete. The other part runs forward into fantasy, into becoming, into a version of yourself that finally earns rest. And between those two pieces is where you break. Every time you want, you fracture. Because wanting says, who I am is not enough. Wanting says, where I am is not home. Wanting creates a gap between the self and peace, and tells you to run toward what will never close it. You were never chasing what you wanted, you were fleeing who you are. You dressed it in noble language. You called it self-improvement. You called it vision. But it was only the internal war of a man who cannot bear stillness. A man who mistakes stillness for death because the will has made him believe that motion is the proof of meaning. But motion is not meaning. Motion is what the will demands. And the more you run, the more your soul forgets what it feels like to just be. Every desire promises unity. It says once you get this, you will be whole. But the chase makes you less whole, not more. It teaches you to amputate the present moment, to reject your current self, to become a ghost chasing a ghost. Desire makes you forget yourself, and then it sells you a new identity, built entirely on lack. You become the one who needs her, the one who isn't whole without him, the one who isn't worthy without that success, the one who must heal endlessly just to be tolerated by life. And as each desire defines you, the soul collapses inward, not with drama, but with quiet vanishing. You don't even notice it. You just wake up one day and realize you haven't felt like yourself in years because yourself was traded away, piece by piece. For the illusion of completion, this is what the will wants. Not your joy, not your peace, but your fragmentation. Because the more divided you are, the more you chase. The more you believe there's something out there that can finally glue your pieces back together. But there is no such thing. The only way back is not forward, it's inward. It's through refusal, through rejection, through stillness. Stillness is not passive, it is defiance. It is the moment you stop letting desire write your name. Because the truth is this: you do not become yourself through longing. You become yourself the moment you stop believing that you are broken. So sit in the silence. Let the ache rise. Do not run, do not name it, do not chase it. Let it burn. And in the burning, feel what has always been there beneath the hunger. Not perfection, not peace, but presence. You are not who you are becoming. You are who remains when there is nothing left to want. Love was supposed to set you free. That's what they told you, that real love makes you whole. That in the eyes of another you would finally be seen. Finally be enough. Finally be safe. But what happened? You gave everything. You made yourself small. You became a version of yourself whose entire purpose was to keep their warmth from fading. And even then it did. You weren't loved. You were used, not always cruelly, not always consciously, but used nonetheless. Love in its purest cultural form is slavery, not because of malice, but because of machinery. The will does not care for connection. It only wants continuation. And what better tool for continuation than romantic longing? What better mechanism for obedience than emotional need? You called it devotion. You called it intimacy. But what you were really doing was dissolving. You bent yourself around their preferences. You held your tongue when you should have spoken. You rationalized their silence, their absence, their cruelty. Because the thought of losing them felt like death. But why? Because you didn't just love them, you made them your solution, and you poured your longing into their body. You assigned them the task of redeeming your suffering. And once you did that, you became theirs, not in affection, but in dependence. This is not love. This is submission. Real love, if it exists, does not ask you to disappear. It does not demand you lose your voice. It does not condition your self-worth on someone else's gaze. But most love isn't real. Most love is a transaction, a performance, a game of emotional supply and demand where the currency is identity and the cost is your silence. You didn't love them. You loved the way you felt in their light. You loved who you got to be when they approved of you. You loved the temporary forgetting of your own ache. And when they pulled away, you didn't miss them. You missed the role they let you play, and you thought you were free. You thought this was your choice. But the will had already written the script. It chose the timing, the chemistry, the illusion. It activated your deepest lack and gave it a name. Her, him, them. And once the name had power, so did they. You became a slave not through chains, but through craving. So now ask yourself, was it love, or was it submission dressed in poetry? If you gave your soul to someone who never asked for it, if you surrendered your truth for a fleeting feeling, then you already know the answer. Comment: I called it love, it was slavery. There's no shame in that sentence, only truth. And truth is the beginning of freedom. You became someone for every desire you ever had. You weren't born that way. You weren't that person. But when the longing came, you adjusted. You crafted yourself around it. You shaped your words, your posture, your habits to match the hunger that ruled you. And now, who are you? You thought you were evolving. You called it growth, becoming. But you weren't becoming. You were being rewritten. Not by truth, but by lack. Desire does not ask, who are you? It asks, what must you become to deserve what you want? And without realizing it, you obeyed. You became the man she might love, the friend they would admire, the worker they would promote, the version of yourself most likely to earn approval. And every time you changed to match a desire, something original in you died. This is the chain of becoming. It is not evolution, it is erosion. Not emergence, but abandonment. You didn't move closer to yourself. You moved further away, smiling, hustling, hoping that the next transformation would finally feel like home. But home never came, because the self you were building was always built on the absence of acceptance. You weren't adding truth. You were layering masks. You weren't discovering essence. You were rehearsing survival. Desire does not let you be. It commands you to perform. And the more you perform, the more you forget who you were before the stage was built. This is why you feel so empty. Not because you are broken, but because every identity you've worn was designed to meet an expectation, not to express a truth. You've been everything. You've been the good one, the strong one, the passionate one, the silent one, the romantic, the fighter, the dreamer. But have you ever just been yourself? Or have you only ever been what your hunger demanded? The will does not want authenticity. It wants efficiency. It wants utility. It wants your body in motion, your mind in service, your soul disguised as a function. And so, as long as you want, deeply, endlessly, you will never rest inside your own skin. You will always be becoming, always becoming, always becoming, until you burn out, until the mask falls, until finally there is nothing left to pretend to be. And in that wreckage, what remains? Not identity and not narrative, just awareness. And maybe for the first time, the chance to be, not as a reaction, but as a refusal. You don't need to become anyone else. You need only stop running. There is a final hunger. One that doesn't cry for more, but begs for less. It doesn't want love or power or recognition. It wants silence. It wants the noise to stop. Not because it has been fulfilled, but because it has been exposed. You begin to want not to achieve, but to stop wanting. This is the final stage, the turning, the quiet death of illusion. At first it frightens you. You confuse it with depression, with numbness. You think something is wrong because the fire is fading. But it's not fading. It's being seen. And once desire is seen for what it is, blind, endless, enslaving, it begins to loosen its grip. You no longer care for becoming. You no longer chase the old highs. You no longer rehearse your personality to seduce meaning from the world. You sit, you breathe, you observe, and in the stillness you realize the will is still there, but you are no longer inside it. You watch it, you don't feed it, and for the first time there is space. Not joy, not hope, but space. The ache is still there, but you no longer call it purpose. The longing still whispers, but you no longer respond. You are not fighting, you are not fleeing, you are simply done. Done being used, done calling your hunger sacred, and done building identity around craving. You once feared stillness. Now you see it as your only honest companion. Because in stillness there is no flattery, no performance, no illusion, just you, and what remains of your soul after you've stopped selling it to desire. And this is what the will cannot survive. Not hatred, not pain, but clarity. The will wants you hungry not because it enjoys your suffering, but because it cannot survive your seeing. When you see, truly see the machinery of desire, you no longer fuel it, and when the fuel stops, the fire burns out. This is not asceticism. It is not moral superiority. It is surrender, not to desire, but from it. You do not become passive. You become still. You do not become lifeless. You become unowned. And from that stillness, what rises? Not a new ambition and not a new goal, but peace, not as a product, not as a reward, but as what remains when the lie of longing dissolves. If you feel that now, if the fire has stopped flattering you, if the silence feels more true than the next dream ever did, then say it. Comment. Desire no longer commands me. Not as defiance, but as a soft final refusal. You have not won. You have simply stopped playing, and that finally is freedom.